Hello, Jenny. Welcome to the show. So happy to have you on.
Thanks so much for having me. Good morning.
Absolutely. Let's jump right in, though. What is Ergeon and who do you serve?
So first, I have a question for you. Do you own a home?
I do, and I recently had to fix my fence, actually.
Oh, okay. So, well, it sounds like you actually have experience with home improvement projects then and working with contractors. So imagine what would an ideal contractor represent to you? What do you wish they are like?
Ideal contractor, affordable, delivers on a good result and outcome, and no headache.
Great. Well, that is what we're trying to do at Ergeon. We're trying to provide the ideal contractor experience, pretty much as you have described it, to mass market homeowners.
So you're dealing specifically with out-of-home construction, fences and
Yes.
things like that?
Yes. Our focus has been starting from the outside of the home in because that's how we can leverage tech the most.
Very cool. So is it a multi-sided marketplace? You have consumers looking for contractors. Do you have contractors on there that are submitting bids on projects, or do you kind of act as the contractor and then give the job to whoever is best for that project?
It's the latter.
Okay.
So from the consumer perspective, right, they actually signed the contract with us. I'm personally licensed as a contractor in a bunch of states, and we guarantee the outcome for them. And that's what allows us to give them a great end-to-end experience. But we do work with subcontractors in each jurisdiction that are local. We have long-term partnerships, which really allows us to guarantee that quality that you're looking for and the affordability.
Super cool. You've raised over $50 million dollars across a couple of rounds of financing. Why raise so much so early? What is so capital intensive about this business?
Sure. It really comes down to if we want to transform the experience, there is actually a significant amount of R&D required. It comes down to two pieces. One is the R&D, right? So on that side, what we have built internally is an AI power system that allows us to take a lot of hyper-localized information, such as what materials are available, what are the regulations in a place, and even site level information about your home. Does it have slope? Is there rocky soil, right? What is popular styles? And with our AI power system, we're able to automatically generate a 3D render of your project, and we can show this to the customer in our remote on-site. And the actual material list, all the labor steps, and the really accurate costing and pricing along with it. All of this live. Now, to build this definitely takes quite a bit of R&D power, both in terms of actual construction R&D, so civil engineers, architects, as well as software developers to pull this piece together. And that's partly why we needed the investment. And the second piece that's necessary with the investment is, like many other businesses, when you start, you have to start your flywheel somehow. So we start with paid channels, as is very typical. And then over time, by giving customers a differentiated and great end-to-end experience, we're able to earn public reviews to build our online but hyper-localized reputation, and as well as to build, that word of mouth, organic referrals in each neighborhood. But of course, that also takes some investment upfront for each market that we are active in, right, to get that flywheel going. So that combination is why we needed the capital.
Fantastic. Speaking of channels, you mentioned paid acquisition was a primary channel for you early on. Now it seems to be shifting more towards organic. What have you done proactively to encourage organic growth, organic referrals? Any tips or learnings that you had there?
Yeah, there are several, right? So on the organic side, as I had already briefly alluded to, part of it in this type of business is to build your localized brand and reputation online. So there are multiple platforms for that. We have Yelp, we have Google My Business, but even the paid channels like Thumbtack and Angie, in all these cases, you earn reviews by just delivering a great end-to-end experience that's seamless for the customer. That's why our customer NPS is in the 70s, while industry-wide, it's closer to 0 for the industry as a whole. So basically, it is really a big chunk of it is around earning the good reputation through giving customers a great experience. So that's one. But you do need to have active listings locally. So it's not like you have one Yelp account for the nation. You have one for each 25 to 50 mile radius, and that goes with all the channels. The second piece that we've been really, is a little bit specific to home improvement, but I think it also relevant to many other things. There is that very neighborhood level impact. So when a fence is being built, people can see visually, oh, hey, this is happening in my neighborhood, right? Because this project is happening right now. I might be walking my dog. I might be taking my kids to school. I might be running to the grocery store, but I see it happening. And it's making me think, oh, maybe I need a fence as well. And of course, fence is a bit unique in that you have the natural neighborhood exposure. So one special tip that we do is actually, we do a postcard campaign to the neighbors that build a fence with us. So if a customer builds a fence with us, the neighbor may say, oh, I think I saw something, but I didn't catch the name. I wasn't sure, when it was. And, oh, what is that again? So we send actually postcards to the 20 closest homes to where we did the project as one particular way, right? We also do emails, etc., but that's very typical. And the third piece of this that's still much newer for us that we've been working on just this year is around creating more SEO traffic. So we have been, as we have become much deeper, more knowledgeable in this space, we've been able to generate, high quality blogs content, right, specific to space, taking the learnings we have from building the company. And we've seen, pretty great growth. So we're now getting to about 50,000 organic visitors a month, and starting from almost nothing when the year started. And this is really showing, hey, if you build good quality content, the traffic will come. And we didn't do this as early in the company because until we had a little bit more national presence, it was less meaningful as an investment. We focused more on the local opportunities first. That as we are now a national company covering more than 30% of the US households, we're seeing this as a very meaningful opportunity for us.
I love those examples, creative and tactical ways to get exposure in the target audience. And direct mail is one of those channels that I think that people like to poo-poo on it because it seems like such an old channel, but it works really well in a lot of cases. So I definitely encourage people to explore it more. Speaking of multi-channel marketing, you're touching these prospects across multiple avenues. They see perhaps a yard sign or, like you said, a mailer. They've heard about you. They're seeing ads online or reading articles online. How do you think about multi-channel attribution? Is that something that you've started to think about as you look at your advertising dollars and investment?
Yes, absolutely. As you know, multi-channel attribution is like the holy grail marketing. It's always been super difficult. So our first approach at multi-channel attribution is a little more simplistic. We would say we will attribute to the channel based on first touch as our starting point, right? So that's sort of because that still allows us to do kind of like this was the primary channel, but especially with SEO, we are starting to do more work around multi-channel attribution. It takes a little while to set up GA4 and all that, so it's not like it's gonna just happen instantly. But we are seeing, about 30% of our leads at some point has gone to our blog page. So it's actually pretty interesting to see. And this is, of course, a change because prior to that, we just had a lot fewer visitors to our blog page. So this is something that is still a work in progress for us, for sure, but something that we do see a lot of opportunity because as people are making a more considered purchase, right, this is several $1,000s that they are choosing to spend. Having multiple impressions actually becomes increasingly important. If it's a $10 purchase, it's so much more of just like a instant buy. You don't really think about it. Anything that's more like, well, it's just like 2 cups of coffee, But like when it's a few $1,000s, it's much more considered. So people really feel this is an important decision, and having that exposure, even if it's more subtle and subconscious, becomes more important factor.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. Multi-touch attribution is the holy grail for marketers. I don't think anybody's figured it out perfectly yet. But to simplify it, if you think of first touch attribution as what's the channel that brought them to us? How did they first find out about us? And then you look at everything in the middle as what has supported their journey. So you mentioned obviously SEO is a big part of that, where they're doing research. And then you sometimes will also have like a closing channel. A lot of times that might be an offer, an email, retargeting, things like that. But that's just the closer. It wouldn't have worked without everything that preceded it, right?
Yeah.
Another question, kind of going down this rabbit hole a little bit, especially in home services, a lot of decision making happens in what's called dark social. People talk about you like on a WhatsApp group. Hey, anybody have a recommendation for a roofer, a plumber, someone to do my fence? Is that something that you guys are thinking about actively? How do you monitor those conversations, get into those conversations, encourage your customers, your happy customers, to do more referrals in those kind of invisible channels, whether it's on Nextdoor organic or on a WhatsApp group or a neighborhood, listserv or something like that?
Yeah, great question. So, Facebook is a great example where it's not so dark, right? But it gives you a lot of indicators of what people might be doing in the dark circles as well. People still consider Facebook as a place where they're acting socially. So, what we have seen, we definitely, monitor and engage with our users on Facebook. So we'll post an ad. Someone might say like, hey, I just had a great experience with them. And we'll be like, oh, thank you so much, right? And just kind of get that conversation going on Facebook. Similarly, some of them post pictures of their yard transformation on Instagram, etc. So we engage with them first on the public ones. On Nextdoor, we have tested it a little bit, but it for sure is a little bit harder because we are not active in the actual Nextdoor community, so it's much harder for us to see. And what we do instead, that's why we have been primarily saying like, hey, if you like us, just like a general, please share about us publicly, right? Because those reviews are public, and then they can be utilized as marketing material. And we know if people already posted about us publicly, then the chances are it's just human psychology that they will then very naturally talk about it with their friends as well.
Sure. And just to clarify for the audience, dark social is a negative thing. You might be thinking like the dark web.
It's not. It's not visible.
Right. It's dark to us marketers. We don't see it.
Yeah, like it's private. Just we can't see it. But yeah, not at all. No negative connotation.
Right. On the flip side of the value exchange, the contractors or subcontractors that you work with, what is the primary value that you provide to them aside from lead gen? Is that just it, that they would rather just do the work and not have to do their own marketing? How do you pitch yourself coming in there and somewhat disintermediating that kind of exchange where they would previously have to get their own leads or get their own customers?
Yeah. So our pitch to them is actually pretty simple. We're like, would you like to come and do these projects, right? These are actual projects that are completely closed projects. So it's kind of a little different from pure lead gen, where it's like, here's a lead, you still need to talk to the customer, do the sales process, right? We are really fully taking on their entire front and back office, which for most small business owners is 2/3 of their time, because they drive around, they do the on-sites, they make the quote, they do the project management because they're taking all the phone calls. they do the billing, right? And they go to the store, they grab the materials. All of that they spend time on, which is easily 2/3 of their time as a small business owner. We do it all for them completely. So it's really, would you like to show up to this project and make this, couple $1,000s? That's our pitch. It's a bit different because we're not asking them to pay us anything, right? We're just saying, you can show up. This is a guaranteed project. This is how much you get paid for showing up and building it.
So you're providing the specs, you're providing the materials list, you're providing everything.
Everything. I mean, even the materials. Like we order the materials for them, which is also helpful for them because it's a cash flow support for them. But to them, it really comes down to dollars, right? Because for them, what we are really giving to them is stable income, because they tend to go into these feast and famine cycles. It's like sell, build, sell, right? But we're giving you stable income. We are, giving you a steady stream of projects that you always have work if you want it, and then you can also grow with us because and that's the upside, right? Because if you're a small business owner again and you're doing everything yourself in terms of the front and back office, it's actually really difficult to expand from having 1 crew to 2 crews, because that's suddenly you have to generate double the amount of revenue streams, right? And customers for that to happen. But with us, because we take care of all of that for you, you now actually have time to go and find a second crew, coach that second crew, train that second crew. And, in construction, we have even now 400,000 unfilled jobs every month, right? It is just an area with severe labor shortage. And some of our most skilled people today, instead of building, they're doing sales and marketing and everything else.
Fascinating. I didn't know that you did that entire or provided almost the full stack to the builder, to the contractor, and added all that value. Are you doing any innovation or planning around the materials that are being used? Are you developing proprietary materials, or that's kind of a future state?
We already are a little bit. So, today the way things are is actually, it can be quite surprising, right? Because it's so fragmented, like even if you're Home Depot, massive national $400 billion market cap company, yet they sell different materials in different stores. Why? Because the local small businesses are saying, oh no, as a family business, we've always built with XYZ material here. I'm just doing the same. They're not really presenting any new material options to their consumers, right? Or to their customers. And so shockingly, like even within the same state of California that I live in today, and within fence, which people think of as, oh, isn't that pretty generic? No, California is unique amongst the country as the one place where it is almost entirely redwood when it comes to wood fences. People don't use cedar and pine, which is what the rest of the country uses. And in Northern California, where I live now, there's almost no vinyl material being used. Very, very rarely. It's not available in the store. Like you can't buy it. And it's just this like chicken and egg cycle, right? It's like you can't buy it because contractors aren't offering to consumers, and then if the consumers want it, they actually don't have a place to get it anymore. Then you go to Southern California, vinyl is easily 30-40% of the market, because at some point someone decided vinyl would look great and then that sort of started a trend. So we're actually partnering with some material providers so that we are able to bring some of these material options that are unusual to a place and give consumers actually the choice they might want, right? That's our first step of innovation, which we already started. We started, for example, offering vinyl in Northern California, and people really enjoyed it. They were really surprised, but they're like, yeah, I like the look. No one has ever offered it to me before. I think this looks more consistent with the kind of modern look I'm going for in my own yard. Mm-hmm. And this goes in other ways as well. Like local contractors are very hesitant to actually adapt often materials that would reduce labor time. So if, again, in California, no contractor builds with pre-made fence panels. Why? They're like, I don't know. I'm skeptical of the panels. I haven't done it before. But it would actually save labor time, right? But they just view it as, oh, all panels are low quality, et cetera, et cetera. But you go to Northeast and everyone builds with panels. And it's the norm. So
Very interesting.
I think there is a lot of opportunities from the material side in terms of both bringing newer, different materials that are perhaps more environmentally friendly, or in other ways, just materials that would reduce labor time.
Got it. Interesting that you have to consider not just local building code and laws or regulations, but also local tastes and just practices, what people are used to and what they expect. Your national rollout strategy, so you're based in California. How have you been expanding or rolling out nationwide? Is it state by state, city by city? Do you have to first find a few subcontractors that you feel comfortable, and then you open it up to consumers? Talk to me about that kind of rollout strategy.
Yeah. So we do the rollout in, I would say, it's close to city by city, but kind of a broader market. And one of the advantages of using our tech, because everything is done remotely from a marketing and sales perspective and project management perspective, right? Everything is remote except the build itself. That means actually we're opening up the radius at which a contractor is willing to work. Because if they have to do all the on-site, they don't really want to be driving more than 30 minutes from wherever they live just to do on-sites. But if they know this is a job, it's close, it's going to pay them a couple $1,000s, they're much more willing to consider driving a 1 hour radius. So when we talk about city, right, it's really more like, an MSA or even bigger, because it's a much bigger 1 hour radius driving. So that's sort of one thing that we think about. Our entire launch playbook is 100% remote. So all that information I talked about, needing to understand local preferences, materials, etc. Right? We do a bunch of data scraping and market research, but we do it all 100% remotely, and we don't have anyone on the ground. We actually start. What we have seen is, because of the value prop with the contractor being, we have jobs for you to do. So we actually start first by opening up to consumers. And but we do a lot of research to ensure, there is actually enough demand, etc. So we start by opening up to consumers and with a more conservative lead time to when their project would be. We usually tell them at the start 5-6 weeks. And then as we actually get at least a couple of closed projects, then we do the research first, but we really start calling contractors when we have some real projects to offer them.
Got it. So it's not a theoretical conversation. You're offering them jobs that are real with money. Got it. When you said that the quote and the project management is all done remotely, are you talking about just kind of FaceTiming with the customer and they're walking around their yard, using Google Earth to see images of the yard, all of the above? How does that work?
Yeah. So we can start with the quoting process first. And that's pretty similar to what you described. I'll send you a link to the video so you can also see it. But it's very much like this, right? You will be on your phone. Let's say I'm a sales rep at Ergeon. You'll be on your phone. And through your phone, we're utilizing our built-in software, Google Earth, integration with Google Earth, so we can measure not just distance, but also slope, which changes how the construction needs to be done. We're also then talking with you and speccing out the fence with you. Because quite often people will say like, hey, I want the same fence or a similar fence, but I might be having this challenge. Like, I'm worried I have a puppy and it's going to go under the fence. And we're like, okay, you need a kickboard. So it's a consultative process. And we will show you as we're going through this process, basically a few options that either match exactly what you have, which is what often people ask for, or some variants, right? Because sometimes if people want something that costs a little bit less, we can offer you on the spot something that costs a little bit less. And everything is done live, or if you want some additional attributes, or if you're like, hey, I saw this great picture on Pinterest and that's what I want, then we can show you something that's going to be similar to match your needs. So that's done 100% remotely. In terms of the overall project management with the customer, right, outside of this on-site, it is usually not requiring the customer to be on video. I mean, through text and email is a perfectly easy way for you to receive your professional quote. We'll, of course, any discussions you want to have, we'll go with whatever format you want to have it. Some people much prefer text, other people prefer calls for scheduling, etc. Typically people prefer text, etc. It's actually a lot simpler, right? And then all the way through the end, we're always available to do a call if needed. It is rare that we will need to do this video-based again outside of the actual on-site itself. And that's sort of how everything is, including signing off the project, payment, everything is just done pretty much online. We have a customer app, so you can kind of track the progress and just make it easy for you.
Very cool. The consultation you mentioned using video, are you using SLAM technology to model the backyard, or that's not built into the app right now?
No, we are not modeling the backyard right now.
Okay.
We actually just use Google Meet. So we capture the video, and then from there we're able to identify the spec for the project.
Okay, got it. You had mentioned SMS as a communication method. I've heard you say before that the app that you had originally intended to build an app for the contractors, but they were resistant to that type of technology, and you found that communicating with them almost exclusively via SMS to be much more natural and had higher adoption. Can you talk to that a little bit more and what you found there?
Yeah, definitely. So what we found with the contractors is you have to use technology. I mean, this is not a group that's like the most tech forward, right? So, and part of it's because they work with their hands all the time. They all have smartphones, but they work with their hands, so they're not using like a ton of apps all the time for the most part. What we have found is instead of building a native app which requires frequent updates as we push out new features, etc., what's worked much better is we send through SMS a link to a web app. So it's still our app, but they're accessing it through SMS. That's much more natural for them. They never have to do updates or anything like that. We can manage all of that on the back end. And they are really looking for views that are very natural for them. So they like pictures because then it's very clear. That's what part of the 3D visualization we have is also for them, because it's people might use slightly different words to describe the same thing, but a picture makes it much, much more clear. Or we really try to replicate what they use, which is a physical calendar. So we create the appointments in a way that just very much looks like a calendar. It's not the most like slick, beautiful looking UI, right? But actually it's what makes them feel this is familiar. This is really easy for me to understand on the intuitive level.
Any other tips you have for building technology for an audience or breaking into a market that isn't very tech savvy or isn't tech forward? Anything else that you've learned along the way?
I think the way we really did it is that we recognize consumers are going to be so much more comfortable adopting the tech first versus the contractors we work with. So we actually built a lot more of the tech for the consumers. And then we think of our, let's say, our internal operations team as the helpers to the contractors. So if they do run into any challenges from a tech perspective, we're still able to like fall back to literally texting people screenshots, right? But we our internal team have full access to the app, can see exactly what they see, and is able to help them troubleshoot.
Got it. You mentioned that the contractors, you're not charging them. You're just offering them a job with a set price. You've figured out all of the material costs and what to quote the customer, all of that in your application with algorithms, et cetera. Anything as relates to pricing that you've experimented with or tested different pricing models, whether it's charging subcontractors for leads or other types of experiments that you've done around pricing?
Yeah, we haven't played too much with fundamental models, but what we, a big learning here is that market, while we set our prices to be market, this is a traditionally very intransparent market. If you ask 5 contractors to give you 5 quotes for the same project, you will see a pretty broad spread, right? That's very typical. So that to an extent masks some of the other demand supply dynamics, but it comes down to demand and supply. Let's say in a city where a lot of contractors happen to live there themselves, they tend to actually charge less because for them it's closer. And it's also more competitive, right? In cities where very few contractors live there, then we see the opposite, because a lot of contractors are willing to drive out there to even do the quote. The prices tend to be higher. Mm-hmm. We also see the same kind of supply demand effect happen from driven by seasonality, from weather or holiday, right? So during holidays, people are more focused on things outside of home improvement. They're focusing on either whether it is travel, gifts, etc., as their primary spend categories. So it tends to be, the prices drop in the market as because from the contractor perspective, they're like, well, I also need to make money to buy Christmas gifts too. So they're more flexible and they will drop prices a bit, right? Or during other times where we might have peak season, windstorms come through, a whole bunch of fallen fences, a lot of people with urgent projects, then prices rise across the board. And yes, it is mostly labor, but it is actually even with materials.
Sure.
It's like, hey, there's just not enough materials available. How can we get it there? The costs are going to go up there as well.
We all saw that with the price of lumber over the last few years. Very interesting. So your platform is able to account for all of those fluctuations in price and seasonality, and you're adjusting for all of that.
Yes, exactly.
Got it. Has there been any experiment that you've done that surprised you with the results or changed the way that you thought about the business or the customer that you're serving?
I would say some of the experiments we are testing now, that has been pretty interesting. So we, for example, there are 2, I'll just share 2. They're both around payments. And the first one is tips. So this is actually an industry that's where tips are not common. It's not Uber, it's not delivery, it's not restaurants. In restaurants, like at least for as long as I can remember, right, tips are just common. And if I think back, I don't think I've ever tipped a contractor personally.
Sure.
It just doesn't seem common in this industry. But very recently, we rolled out tips as a feature on our platform. We said, let's try something different. I mean, maybe tipping is so common in other things, but not in this industry. We were actually fairly surprised, I would say, to find it's a very new experiment, but already we see 20% of customers are tipping. I mean, there's zero obligation, right? And the tips are not small. The tips are about like $100 on average. So I would say I'm genuine, because if you go to a restaurant, you're not tipping $100. You're tipping like $10, $20, something like that for a typical, more typical meal. So it's that I think was quite surprising to me. I didn't expect people to do that, but I think it shows. It really comes down to if people feel, wow, this was a great experience. I'm really happy, right? I see how hard the contractor worked to give me this high quality product that I'm happy with. Yeah, I feel generous and I'm willing to tip. I think that was definitely a recent surprise for us.
That's super interesting and surprising. Yeah, I wouldn't have thought of tipping a contractor. I mean, nowadays it seems like tipping has become pervasive in the US, where everybody's you
Yeah.
kind of flip, the flip the iPad around kind of meme, where it's like you gotta they're standing right in front of you and asking for the tip. But it makes sense if somebody, did a job well done and you want to show some appreciation, why not give a tip, right?
Yeah, I think that was interesting. I think the second interesting thing around payments was the following. We offer 4 payment options. We offer credit card, bank transfer, check, and financing. So I would say a couple of surprises. And one, I would say when we started, we didn't actually offer bank transfer as an option to start. We just offer credit card or check. But after we saw, a very meaningful portion of the customers were paying by check. Like when we started, it was like 80% plus people actually picked check over a credit card, which was honestly surprising to me. It's like, but with a check, you gotta like write it out. You gotta go and actually mail it somewhere, However, it made sense that as people are dealing with larger dollar purchases, right, the check was actually something for a lot of people. Like, well, once it's over, let's say $2,000, I mean, my credit card limit is a credit card limit. So an extra $2,000 is a lot. Like an extra $5,000, I really need to like write a check. So we actually introduced the bank transfer option, which has been incredibly popular. Almost, half of our customers actually go for the bank transfer option, which I would say was a bit surprising to me. I thought people would be quite less comfortable, because that requires you to input bank information. But I guess once your project size is a certain size, we see still primary credit card being used for small projects. But for the bigger projects, it's actually way more popular option than I would have expected. And the additional surprise I would say on this front was we started a partnership with WiseTech, and we've integrated them into our API, and they provide customer financing. And it's a very nice, smooth process because it's all fully integrated into our regular checkout flow. And I would say I was surprised, given how high interest rates are right now, that people are still quite interested and willing to go with the financing option. So I would have, as we all know, interest rates are more than double 18 months ago. So right. I would have thought I personally would have guessed, people would just stop using the financing option. In fact, we have seen an uptick in financing. And I think that comes down to, or the learning for me there is really around, it's all about what are the interest rates you're offering versus the other options they have. If this is a project they really want to do, they have to finance it somehow. And if their credit card debt rate is north of 10% and you're offering 5%, what you're offering looks incredibly attractive to them. So it's all around, relative versus absolute.
Yep, definitely. So you're currently doing fences. You said you are able to service 30% of the population. What's next in terms of your product roadmap, and what's the grand vision if you fast forward 5, even 10 years out?
Yeah, And from a roadmap perspective, I think we're very systematic in how we've approached it. We did Northern California Fence for 3 years, and then we started doing our geo extension. And now I think we're going to be turning our attention more into product extension. And we're going to continue to leverage the categories where we believe the tech we have built and the systems that we have understood give us the highest, differential, right, in terms of the customer experience. So we'll continue with outside the home categories. We've tested a few of them in small quantities like turf or some hardscape in the past, right? We've done a little bit of testing, but really it would very much be that turf, hardscape, decks would be the next set of categories that we would be looking at. And then from there, looking at transitional elements going into the home. Because again, we can still measure relatively easily remotely, right? So that would be your windows and doors and roofs type of elements. And finally, going inside the home. I mean, right now, of course, the last couple of generations of iPhone, you can already do 3D measurements of your home using that phone. But we serve the mass market. So we need to wait for that to be in like 80% of the hands of homeowners, right? Versus today, that's still a small minority.
Got it. So you do plan to go into the home and become a full service builder contractor for any type of home improvement project in the future.
Yes. And we definitely see from our customers how much they enjoy this sort of convenient, seamless end-to-end process, experience we give. And the aspiration is certainly to bring that to all categories.
Amazing. Yeah, it's home improvement is one of those categories where it's most of the time you end up frustrated for one reason or another. Either the project took too long, or they didn't clean up after themselves, or you feel like you got ripped off, or for one reason or another. So if you're able to make it more transparent, more convenient, there's certainly a large market there. Last question for you before we go on to the lightning round. You started remote, right? The company is fully remote.
Yeah.
You have team members all over the world. How do you make that work well? What are your thoughts on remote, fully distributed teams?
I mean, there are lots of fully remote teams these days, especially ones that grew up in the pandemic, or many teams experience full remote in the pandemic. So I would say, I like to focus on how to make it work for a very geodiverse team. We have team members in 49 countries, which is unusual, right? So some of the things that is easier said than done, like one is to be really fair and transparent across policies and ensure the policies are truly inclusive, right? And making sure there's like no exceptions. Like it's not like, because it's so easy to make an exception for your US based team. They're US based, so therefore they have different holidays, or they have this, or they have that. So, and as one country example of this, we put a lot of thought into like little details like benefits and how do we make it flexible so that it's useful for diverse teams. A small example is holidays. We actually don't have any company holidays, 0. We actually just say, hey, everybody gets the same number of PTO days. There's some tenure-based differentials, right, globally, and you choose which local holiday you want to take off. Right? And then we'll say, yeah, sure, on like major US holidays, we will not do any outbound customer calls, but you are absolutely welcome to come in and do other work and still work that day. So you don't have to waste a day that no one's celebrating in the country, right? So that's a small example of that. I think the other thing that, of course, every remote team talks about, but cannot be emphasized enough, is with remote, you actually have to communicate much, much more, not less. People always think, oh, it's remote, it's great for introverts. No, like being remote means you get less opportunity to just pick things up,
Right.
And instead you really have to be much more intentional, right, to create those connections, and especially ones that are beyond regular work, right? So whether it is like we have all sorts of social channels on Slack, so many of them, and they're very active. They're around different interests and hobbies, and we have interest groups, we have happy hours, we have themes, and we have all these donut matches so that people can meet each other one-on-one. And we allow people a small budget to do local meetups on an ad hoc basis. But you have to be far more intentional about making those connections versus if everyone was in the same office, you can just take it for granted somewhat like, yeah, people will connect because they're human.
Yeah, really good point. I'd love to keep going, but I know we're out of time here. So we like to close out with a lightning round. I'll ask you a few questions. Tell me the first thing that comes to mind.
Okay.
What's a book, newsletter, and or podcast that you find yourself recommending most often?
I love Adam Grant and all his writing.
Yeah, really good stuff. You listen to his podcast as well?
I'm not listening to the podcast. I follow him on Instagram, so I get the feed. I follow him on Instagram and LinkedIn, so I get the feed, and that's like easier for me to digest. But yeah, I really love his work.
I think it's called Work Live or Live Work. I'll have to double check that, but yeah, I like his stuff a lot. What's a piece of terrible advice that you've received in your career?
This is what successful XYZ looks like, whether it's a manager, leader, whatever. I think in the end, you only succeed by being authentic to yourself. But the peer pressure is definitely there to be, well, this is the skills you need to be successful as a leader, right? And I think that's actually bad advice. It makes people not play to their strength and try to cover for their weaknesses, which, well, they're your weaknesses. You'll never be the best at that.
So forging your own path and not trying to fill someone else's preconceived notion.
Yes, exactly.
Who's a mentor of yours that's had the most impact on your life or career?
It has definitely changed over time. I think, I think a lot about my dad lately because I haven't seen him for 5 years. He lives in China, so which is why I haven't seen him for 5 years. And what inspires me the most about him is his eternal optimism and persistence. He's a founder as well, and I think that's just particularly as we've been navigating dynamic and volatile times, it's the only way to actually make it as a founder.
Yeah, you have to be very optimistic, a little bit crazy to go down this path.
Yeah.
What's a misconception that people often have about you?
So being an Asian woman, I would say it's very interesting. So I think I conform to a few of these stereotypes, right? Like I'm good at math, I'm terrible at driving. Some of the stereotypes absolutely ring true for me, and I definitely own that. And I think where it's really an interesting dichotomy is around emotional intelligence, and this is something that came up earlier this week. So as Asians, we grow up being told to suppress our feelings, right? So that is very much something that we definitely didn't grow up with, for me as well. But then I think the societal expectation is that women are much more emotionally expressive. So I think they get a bit confused. Yeah, I think one area that perhaps causes a lot of confusion for people on which bucket to put me into is around how much I express my emotions. So people expect as a woman, I am stereotypically, women are more emotionally expressive. But on the other hand, due to my Asian upbringing, which is all about emotional suppression in East Asian culture, people will be very surprised at my lack of emotional reaction to events. So I think that's probably one that confuses people the most because they're just like, okay, you could be in one of two stereotypes, and where do I put you?
That reminds me of a study, you probably have heard of it. They were doing math testing for Chinese girls, and they did two separate groups. One group was primed with, I guess they were meant to be reminded that they're girls, to evoke that stereotype, and the other was reminded about like Chinese culture and things to kind of anchor them into that stereotype, and it actually affected their performance. So
yeah, I think I read about that study, and it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Two more here. So if you could change one thing about the startup world, what would that be?
I think startup world runs a lot on hype cycles. So there is both irrational exuberance on the way up and irrational pessimism or conservatism on the way down. I would wish for that to be smoother. I think that would create actually more value for everybody.
Yeah. I feel bad for anybody who's building a crypto startup or a NFT project right now. You're absolutely right.
Right.
But now it's all AI, right?
Right. But now it's all AI. But it's irrational on both sides, right? And it doesn't benefit the investors to have great ROI or the founders either.
Absolutely.
in both sides of that equation.
Last one. If you could have coffee with any historical figure, dead or alive, who would you choose?
I guess I'll pick someone alive. Of course, Jensen Huang is in the news a lot lately because of NVIDIA. But I just saw a clip of him yesterday on LinkedIn, somewhere in my feed, that talked about, if someone asked if you were to do it over again, what would you do? And he's just like, I just wouldn't do it. So I found that to be incredibly authentic and honest and, rare for someone who's been so successful, like so incredibly successful as a founder. So I think he would be a really interesting person to talk to because I feel he would be really, comfortable speaking the truth.
Yeah. I know a clip you're talking about. It was an interview on the Acquired podcast. And I was very shocked by his response. With all the success that he's had, it's past $1 trillion in NVIDIA. And he said, honestly, I wouldn't do it again. So like I said before, you need to have a lot of optimism and a little bit of craziness to do this entrepreneurial journey. Jenny, I enjoyed this so much. Thank you so much for your time and sharing your story and your insights. If you can close us out with any final words that you would like to share, and how can people reach you if they want to continue the conversation, and how can people be helpful to you?
Yeah, I always really appreciate, connecting with others and helping them on their founder journey. I think it's a challenging journey. It's a lonely journey. So the best thing we can do is to help each other. You can always find me on LinkedIn. That's probably the easiest.
Fantastic. I'll put a link to your LinkedIn profile in the show notes. Thank you, Jenny. We'll be rooting for your success and hope to stay in touch.
Thank you.